Welcome to the Purpose and Profit Club podcast for nonprofit leaders, mission-driven creatives, and social entrepreneurs. Get ready to stop dreaming and start doing. Here, ideas become action. We prioritize purpose and profit. You ready? Let's go. Today, we're talking about plateaus. Now, every organization ever, every business, everything has experienced some flavor of a plateau. And so for a lot of nonprofits, it sounds a little bit like this. Your campaign started strong. Donations were rolling in. You were feeling excited. You could feel the buzz. You could feel like this is working. And then like clockwork, it just flatlines. I call this sometimes the messy middle, right? But that's that point where you're like, what the heck? Wait, was that it? Was that the whole thing? And it feels like this stall out. Okay. So tell me, sound familiar? That's what we're going to dig into today. Now, plateaus don't happen because people stop caring, because your donors are like, oh, no, I don't care. It's not for me. They happen because you're not giving them a reason to keep engaging. So we're going to dig into the 5 reasons why plateaus happen today and some of my favorite strategies to get you out of the messy middle, get you out of that plateau, and close that campaign strong. So let's dig into this idea of hitting a fundraising ceiling. This may happen in your email campaigns, social campaigns. It could happen in a capital campaign, a direct mail fundraiser. It's pretty much on the menu for any sort of fundraising tactic. So if you're finding that this is something that is happening again and again, number one, you're not alone. Okay. Many nonprofits experience this plateau. Sometimes they experience it in a year-over-year revenue plateau or just this campaign stall out where, again, you hit it out of the gate strong and then you're like, wait, what happened? Right? So the good news I have for you is they're not permanent. And in fact, they're a signal that there is something you need to do to pivot your strategy, to re-engage or engage for the first time your audience, your donors, your followers, your constituents, the people, so you can get out of that plateau, out of that messy middle. Okay. So I want you to imagine for a second, doubling your next campaign without doubling your workload. This is the work that our clients do in my coaching program, The Club. So if it sounds impossible, it's actually not. It's not impossible because so many organizations I work with are doing this. The key here is identifying the hidden barriers that are holding your campaign back and overcoming them. So we're going to go through some of those common barriers that I see, starting with the first one. You're speaking at donors and not with them. So donors are smart, y'all. They're tired of being talked at. They crave genuine conversation, not monologues. Ooh, does that hit? Not monologues. If your messaging feels like a lecture, expect them to tune out. Now, I'm going to give you a real life, for instance, which is I was the recipient of a pitch recently. And this particular pitch was a sales pitch, and it was bad. B-A-D, bad. And it was bad for lots of different reasons, but the reason that is relevant to you is I felt like I was being lectured to. I didn't even feel like I was part of this sales pitch at all. This person pitching me went on and on and on without checking in on my body language, on my cues, on the words I was saying or not saying to see if I understood, had questions. They just kept going. And donors are the same way. No one likes to be droned on and on and on, right? And no one likes to feel like this hierarchy of you're the organization and you're going to ask them for money and this is how it's going to go. So you're speaking at donors, not with them. And that's like a recipe for high churn and low engagement in your campaigns. So here's the fix. Shift to collaborative storytelling. How do you do that? Making donors partners, not bystanders. How can you think about this? How can you make donors partners and not bystanders? Now, here's like a nuance. You're not going to make your donor a board member, a committee member. That's not what I mean, but you want to involve donors in the narrative, in the stories that you're telling, highlighting their role. And remember when we did the investor series on the podcast? This is a great time to highlight their role as an investor or a seeder of change. Seed, like planting the seeds of change. You, donor, you, follower, you are part of our seed round, right? For this program, you're seeding this change. So you want to think about, what are some ways that I can tactically stop speaking at donors and with them? So this may look in the wild as using social media polls, Q&A sessions, live streams, feedback forms to invite donor participation, not in an extractionary way, but in a collaborative way. Personalizing communication. I received an email or a direct mail piece, and I couldn't believe it because it was a expensive direct mail piece that I received. And in it, they had on the outer envelope my name, Christina Edwards, my address. They had all of the right things, air quotes, that you're supposed to have. And then when I went to read the letter, which was front and back 2 pages, it was kind of long, it said, "Dear friend." And I was like, "Friend?" Now, this was a cold outreach. I was not a past or current donor. And I was like, "You know my name because you put it on the envelope." And then they just went ahead and called me friend. No, personalize. Okay. It really felt very transactional at that point. So what can you do? Start to audit your current messaging and look at, where are some ways that I can replace monologues with dialogues? Where are some ways that I can implement a donor survey, even if it's just a Q&A button on Instagram or a poll or something like that? Highlighting donor impact, showing with regular updates that connect the donor to their contribution with tangible results. Okay. So really speaking at donors, not with them. And that's why sometimes I'll say to my clients who are nervous about a major donor meeting, about that meeting and about what to say. And I'm like, you should not be presenting to them like a teacher who is lecturing in a college class. They should not be in the audience just taking in your slides. This should be a two-way conversation. You should be listening. You should be asking great questions. So you really want to make sure it's a two-way conversation. All right. Reason number 2, you're not using your biggest supporters to their full potential. Here's what I mean. Maybe you're trying to run a successful campaign without involving your supporters. It's like trying to win a relay race with a team of 1, right? It's exhausting. It's impossible to scale. So remember, your biggest fans, volunteers, donors, influencers, community members, they actually want to help, but you need to give them the baton. You need to make them easy. This is where a social street team partnering with influencers and ambassadors online changes everything. That's the method that I've created. We teach it inside my coaching program, The Club, where we give you the entire method, the entire scripts, the entire process to build your street team. So the fix here is actually mobilizing your street team, made up of loyal supporters, champions, and online influencers who are eager to amplify your mission and fundraise. This is how you turn fans into advocates. And I teach a process, a 3-phase campaign process. So if we're talking about the messy middle, and you know the messy middle for you is the middle of the campaign when donations and engagements tend to stall out, y'all plan for it. When maybe you want to mobilize your street team then. Plan ahead. It's like when my kids come home from school, I know they're hangry. And it's like the 100th time that they come home from school, I need to expect this, right? What's my plan here? I can move up dinner. I can plan for a snack. I can plan to stop somewhere on the way home. Like, this is a solvable problem, but not planning for it and then being pissed off that they're hungry every time they come home, right? That's when we get into that we're behind the 8 ball there, right? We're behind it and we're reactionary there. So I want you to go, okay, if this is a predictable part of my campaign, whether it's the midpoint, whether it's slow to close, what are some ways that I could mobilize my street team, or what are some other ways, and we'll keep going, some ways that you can engage and move through that plateau to finish strong. Now, to give you an example, I worked with a client who started their first street team. They had 10 members in their street team, mixed up of online influencers and your average folks, your ambassadors, your volunteers, and they doubled their campaign year over year, their fundraising campaign with 10 people. You do not need hundreds of people, but you need advocates. When you look at a $100 million organization like Charity Water, you can see people, influencers, street teamers, advocates have been a huge part of their growth and their success. They are not a 100-year-old organization. They're relatively young for their massive footprint, their massive impact. A huge tipping point for them is involving their community. All right, reason number 3, lack of urgency and clear call to action. So what am I seeing? I'm seeing vague appeals that lead to vague results. If your call to action doesn't make donors sit up, grab their phone, and act now, don't be surprised that they don't. Okay. So vague appeals are vague, and vague calls to action are when you say things like make a difference, things that are just not, they are nonprofit speak, and they are very vague, and they're very just sterile. I'm not exciting. So think about some ways that you can dial up urgency and dial up your compelling calls to action. Maybe stating what you aim to achieve and by when, really making it time bound to increase the urgency. Communicate the consequences of inaction. This is some version of what StoryBrand, their framework, is called negative stakes. What is the cost of waiting? What is the cost of inaction? That can be a helpful way to tell one angle of the story. Using emotionally resonant language. This is a big one because I think you'll think you're using emotionally resonant language, but you're just using the same 3 adjectives, like make an impact, again and again and again, instead of using the language that makes sense for your brand, your voice, your values, tapping into the values and emotions of your donors, your clients, your services, your programs, like the people within your organization. Okay. A client of mine inside the Purpose and Profit Club recently shared her fundraising page, and we encourage all of our clients to do this before they actually launch. So she shared it in our community group and asked me for feedback. And one of the things I loved about hers that I haven't seen much of is they had a countdown timer. So we see this a lot in the for-profit world. So it's a countdown timer that until the campaign closes. So for example, if the campaign was 2 weeks long, then it would say 14 days, or it really would say 13 days, 12 hours and 57 minutes. And so it was a countdown timer. You may have a donor match that you could use a countdown timer, or for folks for year end, their countdown timer could be December 31st. So it's not just about that one tactic, but that's an example of what urgency that is believable and doesn't feel made up looks like in the wild, okay? Reason number 4 is a big one. Get ready. Your team isn't bought in, and it shows. If you're not the most excited person about your campaign, why should anybody else be? Think about that. The energy, the excitement, the enthusiasm, the confidence, the courage you bring is contagious. And I'd rather it be contagious for good, not for bad. So if you're coming to me and you're saying things like, gosh, it's like pulling teeth to get my board to do anything, or my board barely ever fundraises, or it's really hard to get buy-in from my ED or from my comms person on this, right? Ask yourself, what's my energy like? When I'm showing up and presenting it to them, what is it like? Imagine this. It's 2025 and your fundraiser has doubled in size. You've created an unstoppable movement and your board speechless. Your impact record-breaking. On Thursday, January 30th at 1 p.m. Eastern, I'm hosting a free live webinar. 2x your fundraiser and leave your board speechless. I'll share how you can turn casual donors into loyal advocates. Tap into the $127 billion creator economy with free influencer partnerships, all without adding to your workload. Plus, we'll kick open doors to my group coaching program, The Club, with a bonus only available to webinar registrants. This is your moment to ditch slow growth and create a movement and make 2025 your breakthrough year. Click the link in the show notes to grab your free spot. And there may be an opportunity there for you to regroup and step into the next campaign that you do as the hype person, as the team unifier. And if you've never showed up this way before, that's okay. Like, do it now. Try it now. Think about how it's this idea of like camp counselor energy for me that I feel like is really, really helpful. But when a camp counselor is trying to get like a group of 8-year-olds from maybe one area to another area, and maybe that area, let's just say, is not an exciting area. Like maybe it's after lunch and they have to clean up or do something not exciting. Bringing that camp counselor energy is going to get that task, number one, done quicker. You're going to get more buy-in and everyone is going to enjoy the process more. Maybe you add, like, if I was going to do that, maybe I'd say, let's see how much we can do in 3 minutes. I'm going to put this stopwatch on my phone. Ready, set, go. The first one to finish, start doing jumping jacks. Just add something silly to it. Now, that's a kid example, but where can you bring that, like, this is going to be fun, cruise ship director energy to your fundraising? Because watch what happens if you show up with confidence. Like, we're going to hit this bold goal. We're going to do this like we've never done it before. We're going to be more audacious, more fun. We're mobilizing our street team. Your board is going to go, how can I help? What can I do? Put me in, coach. What do you need me for? So really, really important to think about, where can I get the board off the bench? Where can I ask them? And where can I, and this is part of that plateau piece. Okay, so maybe your campaign started 10 days ago. Now you're experiencing a plateau, a lull, yeah? You need to reignite. You need to bring them back in, again, with that cruise ship director energy, because everybody went back to their normal stuff, especially your board, especially other staff who are not in charge of fundraising. Bring them back in, bring them collectively, like center them back in on the big, bold goal and make it fun. Make it fun. Celebrate every win. It doesn't have to be the win of hitting the big goal. It can be the win of a board member starting or finishing their peer fundraiser, a street teamer going on Instagram Live with you. Like, there's so many opportunities to be that hype person and for that to have a huge ripple effect. You're just not using it. Okay. All right. Reason number 5. Another tough love one. Y'all ready? Too much noise, not enough differentiation. So think about this. In the sea of sameness with other nonprofits, other missions who serve the same cause you do, or serve a similar cause area or similar community, blending in is the same as disappearing. If your campaign doesn't stand out with its messaging, if it doesn't stand out because of a street team, if it doesn't stand out because of that hype energy, it's already sunk, right? And no wonder it feels that way. So what's the remedy here? What's the solution? Developing a bold point of view. This is the work we do in the club, is we undo all that perfection, put everybody in a box with best practices that so many nonprofits are stuck in, that sounds like an ominous brand and isn't human, isn't one-to-one, isn't personal, isn't sticky, isn't loyalty building. Okay. So you really want to think about, where could we develop a personal, bold point of view? Being unapologetic about your uniqueness. And you can do this in a couple of different ways, leaning into what makes your organization different. Because certainly, even if your organization serves food insecure population in your town, there's probably another one that does that too. What makes you different? I want to know the answer to that. And I want to know it again. And I want to know it from a different point of view and again and again. Okay. Branding your campaign. Please don't call your spring fundraiser. Don't call your Giving Tuesday fundraiser Giving Tuesday campaign. No. Brand it. Give it a memorable name, a theme, something, again, that sticks with donors and sparks curiosity. People want to be part of a movement, whether they want to be part of social change, whether they want to be part of a movement that is a legacy building one. People want to be a part of something bigger. And when you brand something as Giving Tuesday fundraiser or spring fundraiser, you're missing out on that whole piece of the identity, that alignment that's really, really important for their philanthropic goals. Really important. Don't skip that part of your campaign. So I want you to think about, where are some places that we can identify what makes us unique, our organization, our mission, our program or service. really making sure you're crafting a compelling narrative around that and that is fully differentiated from other organizations. Where can you be more creative than you are today? Maybe that's with visuals, videos, infographics, stats, interactive content. I mean, Canva is there for you. Even if you're not a graphic designer, there's so many easy templates you can pull for things like this, okay, to differentiate you. The really essential part of why these 5 very common mistakes are keeping organizations plateaued in the middle of the campaign are all solvable. They're all solvable. The first is to identify that it's happening. And if you don't know that it's happening, just watch yourself on your year-end fundraising sprint, your next spring campaign, and watch it. So you may be running it for a week or 30 days or something like that, and watch the midpoint. It's typically in the middle, but not always. Sometimes we see it go out really, really strong and then it stalls out at the end. So you want to have in your back pocket a strategy for that. And that strategy means speaking with donors, not at them, right? Having that two-way conversation, starting to create that conversation if it doesn't already exist in your email content, in your social content, in any online fundraising. Activating your street team. So that may mean that you need to start building it. If you don't know how to build a street team, or if your street team has stalled out where it's at, you're not compounding it because these are not one and done ambassadors. I highly recommend getting on the wait list for my coaching program, the Purpose and Profit Club. This is the work we do here. This is how literally our clients unlock another 50K in funding, or they double their next fundraising campaign. That's the power of ending fundraising silos where you're the only one fundraising versus having a team alongside of you of influencers and ambassadors. Lacking urgency and clear calls to action. So I see this come up in a lot of different places. I see it in email, especially where you have this beautiful story you're telling, this great impact story, testimonial. Down there at the very, very bottom is a call to action. Make a difference. I'm not excited by that. No one's excited by that. Heck, half of your audience didn't even scroll to the bottom. So you need to dial up the call to action so that it is unapologetic. If you're fundraising, your audience should know you're actively fundraising. And when you're not actively fundraising, great. That's when you're nurturing and you're storytelling. Imagine it like a throttle, right? That it ebbs and flows and it stops and starts. So you shouldn't be in a constant hamster wheel where you're constantly fundraising 24/7. That is not it. And that it's like urgent call to action, but instead that it has nice peaks and valleys, and that I, as your subscriber, follower, donor, know, oh, they're fundraising now. And I see what they're fundraising for. And I see why they're fundraising. And I see that there's team buy-in because I just got an email from their board, or I got a really great video message, right? So bringing in your staff, your board, the people in and around your organization to be as fired up as you are. And if you're not fired up about it, that's your first step. Get fired up about it. The last piece, making sure that you are differentiated. What makes your organization and this particular campaign different? Highly recommend that you revisit all of the names of your fundraisers as you go into 2025 and say, are these a little boring? Do these need to be differentiated? Is it clear in the name who they're for, what this is about? Would people get excited about this? If the answers to those questions are no, totally fine. Now we need to turn up the volume and hit that boldness with just the name of the fundraiser. That is like the first step. That's like the appetizer, right? To get somebody to care, to get interested, to warm them up so that eventually they take action. All right. I will see you next time. As always, I am here if you want to reach out to me. You can come find me on LinkedIn or at Splendid Consulting on Instagram. And I would love to know what your next fundraising campaign is and where you need the most help, whether it's the theme, whether it's that kind of messy middle, or closing it out and finishing it strong. I'll see you next time. Hey, high achiever. I know your sights are set on ambitious, world-changing goals. In the Purpose and Profit Club group coaching program, you can get the support, motivation, and strategy to accelerate your impact. I like to say it's where the inner work meets big impact and big funding. Go to splendidcourses.com/waitlist and you will be first to be notified when we open up doors, and you'll get special bonuses when you join our waitlist. See you inside.